to tell Israel, simply rely on our assurances that things will be fine, is to misunderstand the very essence of the country, the reason for its creation. At the root of Israel's existence is the insistence, not merely the desire, but the insistence on safety for Jews. Israel was a project set up in defiance of a lot of world opinion, because Jews felt that previous liberal good intent to protect Jews had failed, even that which, like my grandfather, came from Jews themselves. My grandfather, before the war, was not a Zionist. After the war, when so many of his family had been killed and there'd been so much destruction for his community, he changed his mind for pragmatic reasons. This week, I've written in the Times about the film Exodus, which was also a book, in which Paul Newman plays a character that sort of embodies Israel's view of itself and also probably American views of Israel, which is a character, Paul Newman's, that isn't interested in words, is interested in deeds, and isn't willing to accept reassurance that Jewish people will be fine, is going to insist on that, if necessary, at the point of a gun. So the point I'm making is that it wasn't merely incorrect for Sadiq Khan to argue, for example, the Mayor of London, that a ceasefire and Israel's safety were compatible. It was also pointless for him to say that because Israel was never going to accept that view. So as an intervention, to tell Israel, simply rely on our assurances that things will be fine, is to misunderstand the very essence of the country, the reason for its creation. I think to some extent it's a myth that Israel tells itself. A bit like the Second World War myth is very important to understanding Britain, but it has a lot of mythological elements to it. For example, the fact that Churchill only comes to power in 1940 after repeated elections of appeasing governments by people who supported that strategy. So countries tell themselves things that aren't completely true. And of course, it's not completely true either that Israel can simply brought itself into being and wasn't reliant upon, the recognition of the United States or of the Soviet Union, both of which Israel put a lot of effort into obtaining. And, the Exodus also ignores the competing but also equally valid claim to the same land by the Palestinians. There's quite a lot of myth making, but you can understand countries better through their myths, and you were not going to persuade Israel, my view, I'm strongly sympathetic to this view, that it's safe for it to live alongside a force next door to it that wants to destroy it and has said so repeatedly. And Israel it's not simply that a question of whether it should or should not have a ceasefire, it simply will not. So that call is, in addition to being, in my view, wrong, it's also naive and doesn't face up. Israel's not going to be satisfied with the statement. On the one hand, you have the right to defend yourself. On the other hand, you should not. That's not going to happen. So I really wrote it so that I felt readers reading it would understand better Israel from reading this, because I think you have to understand how a country sees itself if you're going to understand how a country will play its hand in different circumstances. There's first of all people who, not ununderstandably, are focused upon the rights of Palestinian people. They want justice for Palestinian people. They want a homeland for Palestinian people, and as far as they're concerned, all they can see in this is Palestinian people suffering, and they want an end to that. It's a compassionate position that begins from an understandable historical observation, which was that there were both Palestinians and Jews living in the land of Palestine. So let's try and understand that in that way. So for some people, that is their objective, but it's combined also, I think, with a naivety about who Hamas is. Hamas is a body that doesn't simply accord with liberal sentiment about the freedom of Palestinians. In my view, Hamas isn't interested in civil liberties or in freedom for anybody. And to use the word free about a body that had a civil war against Fatah, the other faction in Palestine, in leadership of the Palestinian people, that doesn't hasn't had an election of its own and doesn't want one, that has an extreme conservative view of things like gay rights and women's rights, and to regard that as a body that believes in free anything is very naive. So I think it combines a position which you can construct a proper argument for with one that is a bit incomprehensible. The idea that you can defend yourself as a country and have Israel living in security when that body is an Islamist fundamentalist terrorist group.